Under the shroud of night, the Vault Hunters pressed forward into the eerie quiet of Shadow Grove Cemetery. The moon hung low, casting a pale light across the rows of weathered tombstones and the angel statue that stood watch in silent mourning. A breeze whispered through the grounds, stirring damp leaves and unsettling the silence. Between the graves, they could make out a mausoleum, half swallowed by shadows, and the faint sound of voices echoing from within. "God damn it! I bring you back and you can't even walk right! What does a necro-dwarf got to do around here to—" The voice was shrill and irritated. A moment later, the mausoleum doors creaked open and a short figure stomped into view. A dwarf, clad in cracked leather and brandishing a staff topped with an orange crystal sphere, glared at the Vault Hunters with wild eyes. Without warning, he lifted the staff into the air, the crystal pulsing with necrotic energy. A wave of sickly light rippled across the graveyard. The earth trembled as skeletal hands burst from the soil. Moaning corpses clawed their way to the surface, eyes glowing with unnatural hunger. The dwarf sneered. Suidas reacted first, vanishing into a flash of blue as she entered her phase walk, slipping past the newly risen dead. Cliff fired off rounds from his Jacob's revolver, each crack echoing through the cemetery as he dropped zombie after zombie with precise, head-popping shots. Mr. Phantom strafed to the side, unloading bursts from his Dahl assault rifle into the crowd, focusing on the dwarf orchestrating the chaos. The fight was brutal. The undead clawed and swiped, but the Vault Hunters pressed forward. Suidas emerged from the ethereal realm right behind the necro-dwarf, blasting him in the back with a concussive wave of energy. Staggered, the dwarf turned to strike, but Cliff was already raising his revolver. One shot, right between the eyes. The dwarf collapsed with a gurgled curse, and the orange crystal on his staff flickered dim, its energy fading. The zombies dropped instantly, crumbling into lifeless heaps around the hunters. Mr. Phantom stepped forward and knelt beside the body, lifting the staff carefully. The orange crystal still hummed with residual power. Silent, intrigued, he slung it across his back. Another weapon, another mystery. Suidas looked around the ruined graveyard and let out a breath. We're not done yet. We still need to find the druid. The mausoleum was the only place left to check. Inside, the air was colder, musty with the scent of long-forgotten dead. Stone coffins lined the walls, and at the far end sat the skeleton the dwarf had likely been trying to raise earlier. At first glance, the chamber seemed empty, just another crypt. But Mr. Phantom paused. There, a breeze. Kneeling beside the central sarcophagus, he pressed a hand to the stone. A faint draft tickled his glove. He pushed, but the slab wouldn't budge on its own. Suidas joined him, followed by Cliff, and together they strained until the stone finally gave way, grinding back to reveal a shaft below. It was just wide enough for a person to drop through. Without hesitation, they descended one by one, landing in a narrow, hidden chamber carved from old stone. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of damp earth. Before them stood a sturdy wooden dungeon door, reinforced with metal bands and old nails. Above the frame, carved into the stone, was the leering face of a demonic figure, its mouth agape in a silent scream. The Vault Hunters stood in silence for a moment, staring at the grotesque carving. "Well," Cliff muttered, cocking his revolver, "if she's down here, she better be worth the effort." The door waited. Whatever lay beyond was no ordinary grave. The door creaked open easily, unlocked and undisturbed, as if it had been waiting for someone. Beyond it stretched a stone corridor, long and silent, extending about 40 or 50 feet into the dark. The air inside was colder, still carrying the scent of old dust and deeper secrets. Cracks veined the stone floor beneath their boots, some narrow and shallow, others wide enough to shift under their weight. This place felt ancient, but more than that, it felt untouched. 3 doors broke the monotony of the hallway. One stood at the farthest end, sealed tight. Another sat flush against the left wall, midway down the corridor. And a third door, closer and to the right, waited just a few feet from where they stood. Suidas stepped forward cautiously, her fingers twitching near the grip of her shotgun, eyes scanning for any motion in the dim torchlight cast by their gear. Mr. Phantom was quiet as ever, but his grip had tightened on the orange-crystalled staff, and Cliff, revolver drawn, gave a low whistle as he glanced between the doors. "So," Cliff said, eyeing the 3 options. Anyone got a favorite door, or are we just gonna flip a bullet casing and pray? No sounds answered them. No enemies leapt from the dark. The corridor remained silent and still, but never truly safe. The vault hunters pressed deeper into the underground corridor, the cracked stone beneath their boots whispering tales of age and ruin. The silence of the corridor was deceiving. Each door ahead pulsed with tension, like a held breath waiting to be exhaled. Without a word, Suidas stepped to the first door and pushed it open. Inside, two skeletal soldiers stood motionless for a split second before animating violently, drawing rusted swords with unnatural speed. The vault hunters didn't hesitate. Mr. Phantom swept his dull assault rifle in a tight arc, rounds tearing into the first skeleton's ribcage, bones shattering in a clatter. Cliff took the second with a clean headshot, his Jacob's revolver barking like thunder in the stone chamber. Suidas darted forward, phase-walking between attacks to blast the remaining skeleton's legs out with her shotgun, before finishing it with a pulse of siren energy. The second door creaked open moments later. Another pair of skeletal guardians sprang to life with eerie screeches. This time, Cliff charged in first, letting his revolver do the talking as he dove behind a broken pillar. One of the skeletons lunged at Mr. Phantom, only to be caught mid-swing by a burst of glowing rounds. Suidas blinked into the room and cracked the last one's skull with a fierce shotgun blast, sending fragments skittering across the floor. The corridor rumbled slightly as they advanced, unknowingly stepping across pressure plates embedded in the floor. With a metallic click beneath Cliff's boot, a section of the wall snapped open and a hidden spike trap shot forward, piercing into Cliff's shoulder with a metallic shunk. "Son of a!" he growled, pulling himself free. Just a few steps later, Mr. Phantom triggered another. The floor cracked open beneath him, a row of jagged spears slashing across his legs. He staggered but stayed upright, blood trailing behind him. Despite the injuries, they moved on to the third door. Another room, another two skeletons. The team was faster now, more precise. Suidas distracted with her phase walk. Cliff rolled to draw aggro and Phantom stood his ground, unloading controlled bursts. The fight ended in seconds. But at the end of the corridor stood a final door, larger, sealed and unmoving. Two large stone runic structures flanked it, carved with angular symbols and worn from time. The vault hunters approached cautiously. Suidas tried the handle, but it was locked tight. No mechanism, no keyhole. Something else was needed. Etched into the base of the runes was an inscription, partially worn but still legible. Open quote, "Blood is the river of life, and we drink gratefully from the river. Blood is the sustenance of the heart, and the heart is the key to the soul. The soul is the guide to heaven, and the guide to mortality." Close quote. Suidas read it aloud, then fell silent. They all looked closer. Each runestone had a handprint carved into its surface, dried brown stains around the stone grooves. Blood. Real blood. "It's a ritual lock," Mr. Phantom muttered. Cliff made a face. "So, we gotta bleed for it?" With little choice, the vault hunters moved into position, Mr. Phantom on the left, Cliff on the right. Together, they placed their hands on the carved prints. The stone seemed to tremble under their touch. Then snap! Metal spikes shot from the runes, piercing clean through their palms. The pain was instant, white-hot, as blood began to flow into the etched symbols beneath the stone. The runes drank greedily, glowing faintly red as the blood filled the ancient channels. The runes pulsed once, then again, and the heavy door groaned to life. Stone ground against stone as it slowly slid open, revealing whatever ancient secrets or dangers lay beyond. Wounded but determined, the vault hunters stepped forward. Whatever this place was, they were getting closer. As the heavy wooden door groaned open, the vault hunters stepped cautiously into a vast, dimly lit chamber. Hundreds of candles flickered along the walls and scattered throughout the room, their flames casting ghostly light across piles of treasure, heaps of gold, old weapons, broken crowns, and glittering gemstones half buried in dust. Bones littered the cracked stone floor, some picked clean, others still wearing rusted armor, long abandoned by time. At the far end of the room stood a raised stone podium, and resting atop it was a single red book, its cover pulsing faintly with ominous energy. But standing directly in front of the podium were two women, both clad in heavy black and crimson armor, nearly identical in build and face. Their presence felt wrong. powerful, dangerous. One of them stepped forward, her voice smooth, venomous, and full of pride. Bellatrix sneered. "So you Fate Makers think you can just waltz into the Wonderlands and start claiming everything? That's not going to happen on our watch." Her sister, only distinguishable by the subtle differences in her armor and the coldness in her gaze, added with a smirk, "Let's show them what we've got, sister." Bellatrix raised her sword skyward, and with a clap of thunder, a bolt of lightning tore down from above, blasting through the stone ceiling and revealing the night sky beyond. Her blade shimmered with raw lightning, arcing with deadly energy. The sisters charged. The fight was brutal and fast-paced. Bellatrix and Artemis moved in perfect tandem, their strikes fueled by both dark magic and sheer strength. Bellatrix's blade cracked with every swing, lightning trailing behind her like a serpent, while Artemis used shadow step techniques, teleporting short distances to slash from blind spots. Suidas was the first to phase out of sight, slipping behind Artemis and landing a powerful shotgun blast that barely dented her armor. Cliff took to cover behind a pile of bones, firing off precise revolver rounds, each one aimed at joints and weak spots. Mr. Phantom rotated between using his doll rifle and the staff with the orange crystal, unleashing strange necrotic pulses to slow the sisters' movements. Still, the sisters adapted. Artemis wounded Cliff with a jagged slash across the ribs, and Bellatrix sent a blast of lightning that singed Phantom's coat and scorched the ground behind Suidas. But the Vault Hunters didn't relent. Suidas used her phase walk to lure Artemis into an exposed position. Cliff distracted Bellatrix just long enough for Mr. Phantom to drive the staff into the ground and unleash a controlled shockwave of necrotic force. Bellatrix stumbled. Artemis fell to one knee. And then their armor exploded, flinging off in pieces like shattered metal husks. What stood in their place were not women. They were creatures, twisted horrors of bone and flesh, with limbs stretched into blade-like claws, rib cages exposed and fused with unnatural muscle. Their white glowing eyes stared blankly as their skin peeled away, revealing the true monsters hidden within. Bone claws. The bone claws shrieked and lunged, faster, more vicious than before. Suidas danced around their attacks, her siren energy blazing. Mr. Phantom coordinated his assault with his death trap, which tore chunks out of Artemis's twisted body. Cliff, despite his injuries, kept firing, gritting his teeth and landing shot after shot. Finally, with synchronized strikes, the Vault Hunters brought both creatures to their knees. As the last of their strength faded, the bone claws collapsed and then disintegrated into ash. The ash swirled upward into the air and drifted through the hole in the ceiling, vanishing into the sky. Silence. Only the flickering candlelight remained. The Vault Hunters stood in the aftermath of the battle, battered but alive. Their eyes turned to the red book on the podium. The Book of Blood. Its presence radiated a strange pulsing magic. As Mr. Phantom carefully opened it, the text revealed a cryptic passage. Open quote. "And so, locked beyond the gateway of blood, and past the Hall of Fires, valor awaits for the Fate Makers of Light to awaken." Close quote. The implications were clear. This book was ancient, powerful, and tied to something far greater than treasure. Perhaps this was the very thing Hyperius was hunting for, a key to something older than the Wonderlands themselves. The moment Suidas lifted the Book of Blood from the podium, the room began to tremble. Loose stones shifted. From the treasure piles and skeletal remains, large stone slabs floated into the air, rotating and connecting, assembling slowly into a ring-shaped portal near the back wall of the chamber. The portal hummed with energy, glowing red and gold, swirling with arcane script. Whatever lay beyond, it was no ordinary path. The Vault Hunters stared into the ring of stone, unsure what awaited them on the other side, but knowing there was only one way to find out. And so they stepped forward.